Hi, this is Everett. Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my studio. I'm broadcasting live from my studio, and I'm live on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, and I'll be on Instagram later on. And if you don't see this as my live broadcast, you can see me on YouTube and Facebook on a replay on the video. I'm in the studio today with my wife Gloria,
Hi,
and
everybody.
she'll be monitoring this the broadcast and also checking the chat room. I guess the chat room's live. Let me see if I got. Okay, the demonstration today of watercolors. I'm going to do a landscape painting. I'm going to use some different techniques. Uh, I always try to find out something to make the water landscapes more exciting, more interesting. So today is a little more experimental again, but I think we're going to enjoy that. So we'll see how it works out. I'm going to take you over to my painting table and let me get started. Where's my overhead? Okay. Uh, okay, this is the reference photograph I have, the beautiful landscape. And I fell in love with the mountains here, the mountains and a reflection of the water and some sky and some clouds and so forth. So that's kind of what that's kind of my inspiration. And so I'm going to paint something like this, but this is just to get me started. So that's always a good idea to have a photograph or something or a reference that you want to try to paint. And then from there, you can improvise. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to improvise a little bit, but that's the scene I'm going to put on paper. Okay, okay, I hope that's in focus now. And yeah, I think it is. All right. All right, let me get, this is the sheet of Gemini 140-pound cold press watercolor paper. It measures 15 inches long and 11 inches wide. 11 inches from here to here and 15 inches wide. A quarter sheet of watercolor paper. 140-pound cold press. And over here is my palette. I've got my palette with the little, it's a special palette I have that I carry on my Plein Airs most of the time, but it's got little wells in here I can put paints in and so forth. And I'm only going to use about 4 colors today. I'm going to use quinacridone violet here, the purple, and I'm going to use ultramarine blue, the dark blue. Then I'm going to have a little bit of burnt sienna up here in the top. And down here I'm going to use a little bit of Chinese white down here at the very bottom. Okay, I think you can see my palette. There's a Chinese white down here, down at the bottom of the palette right here. Okay, and brushes, I'm going to use my Hockey brush, my large Hockey brush. And I got a couple of Holbein brushes. This is a 3/4 inch flat and a 1/2 inch flat Holbein synthetic brushes. I'll use those today. Okay, and also I'm going to be doing, I'm going to use using some palette knives. So the palette knives will also be used in my painting. And also, you won't see this, but I'm going to use these are eyedroppers. You can buy these in any pharmacy or something like that. You get these are just regular eyedroppers, and I'm going to use them for watercolor painting today. These are just standard eyedroppers. Okay, I'm going to use those today. So going to get a little bit wild. So what I'm going to do here now is wet the paper. Going to use a Hockey brush. I'm going to go up and wet the sky up here. I'm going to get this nice and wet up here. Just about this far down. Okay. So before I go any further, though, let me mark a couple things here. I'm going to have go down here to the paper. I'm going to put the horizon line about right here. Horizon line. So I'll mark that in. Okay, and this mountain, I'm going to start in here, about this section here will be the mountain. And I got a reflection here in the water, so we'll leave that alone. Okay, all right, so I did just a couple of little marks there on the paper to get some reference points. Okay, so what I'm going to do first of all, I'm going to start using these eyedroppers. What I'll do here, and I've got a mixture of paint here. I'm going to start out with a blue. Let's start out with a blue. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of this. There, I just put that right into the eyedropper. And I'm going to come over here. I'm going to put it onto the wet paper. Put that on the wet paper. Okay, I get a little bit more on that. Okay, I leave that there. And that's the blue one. Then I'm going to pick up quinacridone violet in the second dropper. Okay, I'm going to put that down here. Put a little quinacridone violet right about right there. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tilt the paper I'm going to tilt the paper and let that run, and let's see what happens. Okay. And what I'm going to do is pick up a little bit more. I'm going to pick up a little bit more water here on my brush, so I get a little more flow. This is experimental. Remember I mentioned that in the very beginning. This is experimental to get something started here. I put a little more water on the paper here. Okay. Now I'm going to tilt the paper again. Get that paint flowing. Okay. Just got to get a little bit more water. Use the brush to move that paint down a little bit. It's getting pretty dark, but it'll lighten up with all that water in there. It's going to lighten up a little bit too. So I'm going to go ahead now. We're going to get that water. Going to get that paint moving now. I'm tilting the paper now. Getting a little pattern up there of dark in the top area. And some of the white paper, that's going to be hopefully that'll be the shapes of clouds and so forth. So we'll just let it go off by itself. Get a little more water over here on the edge. So that was pretty dense paper. I mean, pretty dense paint I got there on the first go. I'll come down here and put a little more water here at the bottom, just to flow a little bit more down here at this section. Okay, so get that water to flow a little bit more. That's pretty dark. Now what I'm going to do is bring a towel up here. Okay, this is really experimental, really experimental. You can kind of let this run off, the excess water run off the edge of the paper. I'm tilting the board onto the towel and letting it kind of go by itself. Okay, then we'll bring it back down. Okay. Now what I may do now is put a little more water up here in this corner. Get to flow some more. I'll bring that towel back. And put the towel back on the board and spread that out. Okay, now run the excess water off the edge. Okay, that excess water, I want it to flow, but then there's too much water on there's too much paint on the paper, so I'm just I'm just tilting the board very much. I'm tilting the board back and forth. I'm gonna get a little more of that quinacridone red in here, a little bit of quinacridone violet in this section here. Okay, bring that down, let that run. Lifting the board while it's still wet. A little more water. Add some more water in there. Get some of that quinacridone violet running up there into the top of that with that blue. Yeah, I'm tilting the board, get that water to run back and forth. Now run the water off the edge. All the excess water, moisture. Let's see. I'm going to go in. I'm going to play around a little bit more with that. I'm going to pick up another brush here. Another hockey brush. Adding some more water to this area. There was a lot of water in that dropper. Let that run down a little bit more. Use the towel. Okay, let me set it down now. what I think I'll do now is go ahead, I'm going to make this area down here. This is okay. That's going to work out just fine. Okay, now I'm going to blow dry this. Get the paint dry. So I'm going to turn the blow dryer on. Okay, now what I did was I wet the paper up here first, very high, on the high side here, on the top. Then I use the eyedroppers to drop the paint into the wet paper. And then I control the flow by leaning the paper on the side. I use a towel here to catch the excess moisture. And what I want to do now is make sure on the edge here, let me turn that off. On the edge, I want to pick up the excess moisture at the edge. So take a tissue, just rub the edge here, get that excess moisture off the edge here. Okay, that'll keep it from causing a blossom over there. Yeah, blow dry it now, and we'll have some sort of a sky effect here. And I wanted a soft sky. I didn't want to have any hard edges, so that's why I used the wet on wet. Be a little dark spot up there, but that's okay. There could be a cloud up there in the sky. Just, you know, this is a simulation. Yeah, I'll get that pretty well. There's still a little bit of damp, but I can stop now. Let that dry by itself. Okay. All right. Now what I'm going to do now, well, that's still a little bit wet, but I'm going to let it dry. Now I'm going to go ahead and paint the water down here at the bottom. So let me start out with same brush. I use a Dagger brush with just water in it. Get it nice and clean. I had some wet paint in there. I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna wet the bottom here. Reflections. This is the water down here in the bottom. Now let me put this up here so you can see. You should be able to see the whole board. You're in. Okay. And so now I'm wetting the sky area or the reflection area here in the water. I'm putting a wet, getting lots of water down here at the bottom. Nice and wet. Let's see. Oh. Okay, all right, now we're going to try again with the paint mixture. All right, I'm going to start out with a little bit of just one drop over here. That was really I'll put just a little bit of that blue down here at the bottom, and then we'll pick up some of that Quinacum violet. Okay, and now we'll tilt the board, going both ways. So we'll get that sky reflection. We'll get the sky reflection here in the water, more or less. And I'm going to use a wet Dagger brush to move this paint around a little bit. So experimental. I was trying to experiment with those drops to get the paint on the paper. That was just my experiment, to see if I could make that work. And it worked somewhat, but then I have to use the brush now, a real wet brush, to move this paint around. And of course, the more water you have on the paper, the more it's going to move. Okay, so let's get that water going a little bit more now. So I'm tilting the board, and of course the reflection is going to look a little different than the sky because you know, it's a reflection. So we'll work with that. Get that down there. Back and forth. Back and forth. Okay. I'm doing a little bit better here in the water area. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to spread this out here. Get that paint moved. So when I put the dropper in there, it located itself in one location. So I'm trying to spread that out a little bit more. Okay, get that covered. Okay, now we'll go back and now we'll get that water flowing. I'm tilting the board, getting the paint to move up and down, left and right. Okay. All right. Okay. So the reflection is going to look a little different than the sky, which is perfect. That's what I wanted to have anyway. Reflection in the water. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and dry this. But let's see if I can take off. I'll drop this down and kind of let some of the excess water run off on the edge into the board. And I'm using a paper tissue to pick up the edge on this section here. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead. I'm going to dry this section now. We'll get the hair dryer out. And I'm going to pick up excess moisture on the edges. That'll prevent any blossoms from forming. The key here now is not to touch it. Once you get where you want it, it's the fact of drying it. You don't want to touch it. You don't want to touch it with your fingers because you'll make prints on the paper. So right now we're just getting a nice even flow. Okay, it's getting there pretty close. Still see a little bit. Once you see the shine go away, then you know it's getting a little bit drier. But that's the part where you want to be careful now, not to disturb it or touch it because it's still damp. You can mess up some of the coloring on the paper. All right, that's pretty well done. Let me take that dryer off, and let me go. I'm going to take off maybe excess water on the edge underneath the paper. Get that nice and dry along there. Okay. This edge here will also be the part of the matting we'll get around it, so it's not that important, the edge of the paper, but you do want to take the extra moisture away. A little bit of sparks over here went away, and a little bit of spark went over here, but that's okay. Put the mat board around that, and it'll cover it up. Okay. All right. So what I've done now, I've got the sky and the water reflection area down here. Now I'm going to make sure this is dry. Again, I'm going to put the dryer on and make sure the edges are dry up here. That looks okay. Okay. Now, I'm going to take my pencil now. Now I'm going to go back now and make sure my design that I had put in here. Now I'm going to use this photograph to give me a little reference here to get in some of the shapes and so forth. Here, this comes up here. Get a little shape. I want to shape these in so that they kind of what I was looking for. And I'm going to this area here. This area over here. Okay, all right. So I took some of the shapes from the photograph to kind of get started here. Okay, now the second part. Now I'm done with the eyedroppers. So what I do, I'll rinse those out a little bit in the bucket. Rinse those out. Now I'm going to go. Now I'm going to go and start using the palette knife. Okay. Now, a lot of people don't know, but you can use a palette knife with watercolor. It's very easy. So I'm going to start with a larger palette. This is a larger palette knife, pointed like a spear. And I'm going to pick up some. What I'm going to do, if you look at the you look at the picture, I'm gonna get the kind of that blue mountain area, and I'm gonna use white also to get some of the snow caps on the mountain. So that's my attempt there. So I'm gonna start down here. I got the blue already right down here at the bottom of my palette, right down here in the bottom right. I got the blue. I took it right out of the tube. So I'm just gonna put my palette knife in there, and I'm gonna go ahead now and start scraping in that dark blue color. I'm going to follow my design here as much as possible. So I put the palette knife right into the paint, and then I put it right onto the paper directly. It's right out of the tube. I took the paint's been squeezed right out of the tube, and now I'm putting it right onto the paper. I'm using a palette knife now to give me a little irregular shapes and so forth. It makes it more interesting. And this is kind of experimental. Get that peak here. There's a peak here. One of those large mountain peaks. This is where I really felt was interested in this mountaintop, because of the way the shape of the mountain. And I like the effect of the snow top portion. I'll come over and get some more of this blue now. There's another mountain peak over here. So what you do with a palette knife, you pick up the paint on the edge of the palette knife, and then you just scrape it in. Just almost like we would do with an oil painting, except now we're using watercolor instead of oils. It's watercolors mixed with water, and oils mixed with linseed oil or Gamsol, whatever they use in their painting tray. So I'm just kind of capturing these mountain peaks with this dark mix of ultramarine blue and I get a little bit of Payne's Gray down there to get a little darker. Just a slight touch of Payne's Gray. Make sure I got a nice dark mix. I'm building this mountain peaks up a little bit. Use some of those white areas as snow tops also. There's a mountain in the mountain range in the background, and in the foreground there's a little hill mass here. There's some brown trees and brown grass and so forth, like a little meadow in the foreground next to the water. So we're going to use that. We'll use that with different kind of paint. This mountain peak here build up a little bit more. And there's another little peak here. A little smaller one. And it'll come down here to the ridge line. I'm going to build this mountain over this side over here. Get a little more height on this one on the side, left side. So I load the palette brush and then just scrape it into the paper. If I was using canvas, I'd do the same thing. I would take the white watercolor right into the canvas. Okay, just up a little higher. Okay, all right, then what I'm going to do now is put this knife down. I've got a smaller one here. Now this smaller pan here, I'm going to pick up some white, some Chinese white. Just right here at the bottom here, bottom right, is Chinese white on my palette. And right out of the tube. Now I'm going to go back. Now if you look at the photograph, you can see here there's some peaks here with snow caps and so forth. So I'm going to put the white in on top of that blue now. Okay. So now I'm going to go in and put in a little bit of white paint on top of that blue. It's pretty thick because I'm picking it right out of the tube, just right onto the palette knife. So that this is simulating the snow caps on the mountaintop. And I'll get a little more in here. And there's one in the back, we'll leave that alone. And this one over here has got a little bit of snow up on the top of this teeth. I'm not going to follow the photograph here. I'm just going to put some color in here on top to indicate some snow tops. I've dropped this paint here on my palette, on the paper, so I'm going to pick it right up, take a palette knife, a clean palette knife, and wipe it off. And that's just white. It's just white paint. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay. All right. So I dropped a little dab there on the paper. So I'm continue to add a little more of this Chinese white right out of the tube, right on top of the blue to give me that white snow tops on the mountains. A little more over here. Put more over here. Okay, so if you look real close, you can see there's snow on top of that mountaintop, and that's what I was just playing with. Okay, now there's a little white paper back here. That's a mountain, little mountain in the way in the back. It's got some snow on it. I'm going to leave that alone. It's just white paper showing over there, so I'm just going to leave that alone. So leave the white paper. It's there. I'm going to use it, take advantage of it. Okay, now I'm going to pick up some of this. Burnt sienna over here is at the very top. I'm going to use a small palette knife, and I'm going to go in now and put it. What I'll do, use a larger palette knife. I got the blue on top of that one. That won't. Now I'd rather not mix the paints now. So now I'm going to use this smaller palette knife. Now I'm going to spread this. This is a little foreground part of this mountain range. It's got like a little meadow here. It's got some brown grass and so forth. And I'm going to use that as a little foreground here on the mountain. As far as the painting goes, that's really kind of the middle ground, but it's the forward part of the mountain range. You got this little low hill here in the front ground. And it's kind of like brown grass. If you look at the photograph, you can see the brown grass along the bottom here, right in front of the water. So I'm using a little bit of burnt sienna, and that's all I'm doing. So far I've used the blue, ultramarine blue in the sky. I've used quinacridone violet in the sky to give me a little pink color or a little purple color, reddish. Maybe a little sunlight up there in the sky somewhere. And then I've used Chinese white on the mountain, on the snow cap. And now I'm using this real thick, right out of the tube, I'm using burnt sienna with a palette knife. And I'm building the shoreline here next to the water. And this is another small hill that goes up. Goes up here on the side. Right down to the water's edge. I use the edge of the knife to scrape, and then you also use the edge of the knife to draw a straight line. So I just pick up the paint on the edge of the knife and then just wipe it on the paper. And it's this low hill, goes a little bit higher, it goes off the side here. It's this little high little hilltop here in the foreground here in front of the mountains along the edge of the water. Okay. And that little white section there could be a little light cloud there in the background. I'm not going to worry about that. That'd just be another thing. Something added to the painting. Not going to worry about it now. Okay. All right, now I've got a little bit of that Payne's Gray Black, and I'm going to put that right along the coastline here. And that'll be like the bottom edge of this landmass by the water. It'll be like a shadow or an edge of the water. It'll be a little bit darker because it's wet from the water hitting the ground. We'll put that along here. And also, it'll also give me a horizon line, more or less, where the straight line across the painting. A little horizon, basically a horizon line. So that's a dark shadow there right on the edge of the water. Should be wet sand at the edge. And I'll drag this straight across to make it nice and smooth. So use the palette knife to spread the paint, and you can also use it to paint with in different brush strokes. The brush stroke is kind of like a flat brush stroke. You can't really do much more detail with that. So I got the hilltop. I got the little hill in there, and I got the bottom of the thing. All right, now last thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to paint a reflection. I'm going to paint a reflection in the water. So the way we're going to do that, I'm going to put away the palette knives. We don't need the palette knives. So clean off the palette knife. Just wipe off the excess paints. Now I'm going to use a 3/4 inch flat Holbein brush, and I'm going to go in here now with just a brush, and I'm going to go in and pick up some of that. I'm going to start here at the water's edge, and I'm going to use this to start with. I'm going to leave a little white edge along the water's edge. There'll be a little white reflection So I'll start this is starting the reflection in the water. I'll leave a little, there's that little white line right next to the water line of the earth. Now I'm going to use a vertical stroke. So the reflections have vertical strokes. If you have reflection in the water, it's going to be a vertical stroke from whatever is being reflected. So I'm going to use a vertical stroke here to simulate that. So this first application here is just to get that shoreline reflection from the small hill. I'm going to water my brush. All right. And bring that vertical stroke up from the edge, bring it forward, or bring it down. Okay. And what I'm simulating here is that there's a little more of this hill mass here that's reflecting in the water. So starting about right here, be a little more of that brown into the water. We'll put that in here. And then it gets a little less right here at the bottom. This section right in here gets a little less. And then it starts to build up again over here. Okay, now the last part will be putting in some of the blue from the mountain. So we got, I'm going to pick up some of this right here on the palette on the bottom. I got ultramarine blue, a little bit of Payne's gray. And I'm going to start right here where the reflection starts here. I'm going to start with the blue color here. And I'm not going to emulate what's there. I'm just going to do a rough simulation here of this mountain reflection into the water. Okay, we'll continue over here. We have just a little area of white over here. Not going to worry about that. I'm going to build this area up over here. try to emulate the reflection a little bit, just a little reflection of what is coming down from the above. See, let me get a little darker over here. Kind of add a little more darker paint here. I added a little Payne's gray in with that burnt sienna. Get just a little bit darker into the water. Okay. Now I think what the last thing I want to do is take a small brush here. I'll use a flat brush. Use the nope. Go back and use my. No, I'm gonna use a brush. I use the paint. I use the palette knives up here in the landscape, up in the land, the mountain, and the little foreground or little middle ground hill. But here I'll use the brush work. So I don't want to change tools here. I want to keep the same. So now I'm going to add just a little water, a little white here in this blue to simulate that, simulate the reflection from the mountain. The little white caps here from the snow up on the mountain. So bring a little bit of that white paint in there, and then we'll put a little bit of white paint in here. Not as thick as on the mountain, but just a little lighter touch, just a simulation that there's a little snow up on that mountaintop being reflected into the water. Okay, all right. Okay, wow. Okay, so we could play with this. We could play with this a lot longer. We could do a little more. You can do a little more detail on some of the things, but we got the main ingredients there. And what I want to do now, let's see. Before I leave this, so the last step I'm going to do is I'm going to take this small brush, small flat Holbein brush, and I'm going to put water, just plain water in the brush, just plain water. Now I'm going to go along. Now here, there's a pretty sharp reflection here, but on this section over here, I'm going to go in and I'm going to soften the edge. And what I do is just touch the edge of this color here and re-wet it slightly. And I'm going to soften some of that edge up because it would be a little softer shape in the water. It wouldn't be as hard edge as the sky up here. It's going to be a little bit softer. So I just take a wet brush and soften up the edges just a little bit to give it a little softer tone. Make the edge a little softer, not as hard. And now loosen this up, but just slightly over here. Be consistent, and over here we'll soften this up a little bit. So that gives the look in the water to be a little softer than in the sky, because this is that's contrast up there is very sharp. You got lights against darks, but down here you got a reflection of that, which is not going to be as defined edges. A little softer edges here in the water. Okay, and differentiate between the water and the sky in the background. But you can still see the slope there. I mean, you can still see the shapes. And before I go, let me see. I've got this little white spire. I'm going to repeat that right here. Just a hint of that little water, that little white edge there. in the water. Just a hint. There's white there. I'm going to put water. I'm going to put white in the water. Okay, just a hint of that. Okay. Okay, let me dry this for a few minutes to see, get some of the paint dry. So I put the dryer on. So while I was working there on, I put used the palette knife to put in the land mass, and then I used a brush here to put the reflection into the water. I'm gonna dry it up just a little bit, then we'll put a mat around it and take a look at it as I finish painting. Get the edges a little bit drier. They don't have to be perfectly dry at this stage. That's pure paint on there, so that's going to take a while for that to dry. Look that thick. And also, even using paint right out of the tube, it gives it a little bit of texture too. You can see a little bit of crevices and so forth in the paint, and that gives it an added density. Okay, all right. And if you can see there, if you can see the edges of the paint. I'll tilt it. You can see there's really thick paint on there, really thick. That also gives that mountain a look of rocks, rocky area. And of course, the water is smooth compared to that. So you have the texture look up here in the rocks, but you have the smoothness down here in the water. Okay, that makes a difference. And the reflection is softer also than the actual mountains on the top. Okay, let's put a frame around this. I'll get the blue one. And let's see. Move this aside a little bit. Now put this mat board around. Okay, wow. Okay. I'm going to move this little palette over here out of the way, and I'm going to bring the board over here so we get a complete look at this. Then I'm going to bring this up here and put this over top of the painting. Okay. All right. Put this around it. Now, if I wanted to put a white border around it, I could put a white border out here, and the white border would be a nice two-sided. You can put the white around it, and that shows the darks, okay? And here the darks will show the whites. And if I put the white in here and put the blue on top, then I could have another border, a white border with a blue outline. So there's all kinds of ways of matting, but this, because of the blue and white here in the painting, I think a blue and white border would also make it very, very attractive. Okay, so those are just some options to think about when you frame a painting. Is to have a colored border compared to the colors in the painting itself. Okay, let's go back to the main camera. Okay, this will probably be a rebroadcast when you see it, because I don't think the live recording went out, but this will be a raw broadcast on YouTube, Facebook, on LinkedIn, and also Twitch, and later on Instagram. So the lessons learned today, I think what I learned today was a little experimentation. Number one, I used the little eyedroppers to drop the water in, to drop the paint on top of the wet water. And there I had to add some more water to it because it was still pretty thick when I put it on there. So a lesson learned there would be to make sure that the paint mixture you put in the tube or in the eyedropper is a little bit wetter so it'll flow, or put more water on the paper. That was something I had to work out there as we went along. Okay, the second step was, again, after I did the sky and the water, the same technique of using the eyedrop colors. And then I used the palette brushes. And the palette brush was very easy to put on, thick paint right out of the tube, put the dark blue and then the dark brown to capture the mountain itself with a little bit of Chinese white to indicate the snow tops on the mountains. And then I went in with reflection with a brush because the brush is easier to do, and it's a lot simpler to use a brush stroke and a vertical stroke. I could have used some other tools, but I decided to use the brush for the reflection. And I think it worked out real well. So that concludes today's demonstration today on landscape techniques. And I think a few techniques of using the spray, using the eyedroppers to add water, to add paint to the painting, and also using a palette knife to add in texture and design. Next Thursday, we're gonna have Thanksgiving, so next Thursday I will not be broadcasting live. I might have a short video out on Thursday. In the meantime, and if you're subscribed to this channel, you'll be notified of the next video that I put out. And then
you can watch it while your tummy's full of turkey.
That's true. Watch it while you're eating your turkey dinner.
After.
Before. Okay. Then on Sunday I put out a anyone can draw with one line only, and I think you'll find that interesting. It'll be out on Sunday. So until next week, you all stay safe. Have a happy Thanksgiving. And I'll see you back on the following week on Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then I'll be on this evening. This evening I'll be here live at 7:30 p.m. with Simply Drawing with Everett. And you can see that broadcast tonight at 7:30 p.m. So until next time, next live video, you all stay safe. So I'll see you on the next live video. Bye.